And 3, 2, 1. Welcome to The Peaceful Truth, the podcast where we talk about everything from women empowerment, feminism, and everything in between. You're joined by your host, Kenzie. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for another episode of The Peaceful Truth. This week, I was actually inspired to bring up this topic, ironically, because of a viral TikTok video. So if you don't know what TikTok is, I'll try to do my own brief summarized version of what the app is. So it's an app that's kind of like social media where it's short video clips, kind of like Vine, that are on loop. But oftentimes people do voiceovers or certain songs or certain sounds, and they do dances and voiceovers and certain trends to these sounds. And that sound itself kind of goes viral and becomes a trend within itself. So this topic was inspired actually by one of those trends. The song that went viral is called Therapist by Mae Miller. And it's about a girl who calls out a guy in her life who just wants her to hold his hands through his issues and fix things. And the main line is, "You don't need a girlfriend, you just need a therapist," which actually has caused me to reflect on that. And I think it brings up a good topic for the podcast. And I think it's about why straight men shouldn't go to their female partners to try to fix them to try to have them fix them, as well as only vent to their partner and rely on their partner for that sort of emotional support. And that can be any partner or any combination of people. I don't think that's healthy for any partnership, but for the sake of this podcast and for the sake of this topic, I'm talking about men and women relationships. And I actually will shout out my ex, him and I had this conversation often where we brought up this topic or something similar, and I found it to be super interesting. And I believe, I don't want to quote him on this, but my interpretation of his thought is that it's unhealthy to completely rely on your partner as the means and path to happiness and solo emotional support, which I totally agree with. And I think it's important to feel, though, comfortable enough to want to confide in that partner, but not necessarily have to and rely on them for your happiness and emotional support. So I first wanted to talk about why I feel like some straight men feel like they can't confide in more than just females in their life and not confide in men as their emotional support. And as a preface, a lot of my ideas are theory. And again, it's not all men that do this, but I think it is a trend enough to talk about. And I think it has to do with systemic issues of toxic masculinity. So again, the idea is that if you only talk about your thoughts, feelings, and emotions with another man, then you will be considered less than a man somehow, because discussing your emotional side of yourself is considered a feminine thing. And because it's feminine, that means it's bad, which actually loops back to sexism, because the whole thing of your masculinity being jeopardized is that being female is a bad thing and having feminine qualities to yourself is a bad thing, even if you're a completely straight man, but that is not true. Feminine qualities or gentle qualities aren't necessarily male or female, but that's what society has dubbed them to be. And even if it were male or female, what does it matter? Anyway, which therefore it means that men are more comfortable with being emotionally intimate with women. And a lot of my thoughts today are going to come from an article from Harper Bazaar by Melanie Hamlin. It's called "Men Have No Friends and Women Bear the Burden." So this quote says, "Unlike women, who are encouraged to foster deep platonic intimacy from a young age, American men, with their puffed up chest, fist bumps, and awkward side hugs, grow up believing that they should not only behave like stoic robots in front of all other men, but that women are the only people that they're allowed to turn to for their emotional support, if anyone at all." So again, that's just addressing the whole concept that men, unfortunately, have this burden to bear because of sexism and toxic masculinity, where they feel like they can't display their emotions. So the second quote I wanted to work through from this article is, "For generations, Men have been taught to reject traits like gentleness and sensitivity, leaving them without the tools to deal with internalized anger and frustration. Meanwhile, the female savior trope continues to be romanticized on the silver screen, making it seem totally normal and even ideal to find the man within the beast. So that was like another topic that I talked about with my ex. I thought it was interesting. And by the way, this has nothing to do with our relationship. We just talked about this topic and we found it interesting. But the female savior trope, and oftentimes that's romanticized and praised for women to behave like this. And I feel like in other relationships in my life, I feel like I have romanticized that. Like, oh, I'll fix someone, I'll be their support, and I'll be the person that they can rely on. And that is idealized and romanticized. So even though I think it's fine to be a supportive partner and feel comfortable to talk about anything with that partner, it doesn't mean that they should be your main and sole and only source for what you're dealing with. It is a toxic relationship if you're just there to save and fix and be gentle with them. Again, I don't feel like it doesn't mean you can't openly talk what you're going through. I think it just means that a female partner can't be the only source to pull someone out of something negative. I feel like you have to seek help in others, professionals, other males, and beyond that, I feel like they can't be the reason that you can or can't solve your issues. That whole concept of this type of dependency is toxic, and I feel like it could be futile for a relationship. Okay, one of the last quotes I wanted to bring up from this article is, where men cast their wives and girlfriends to play their best friend, lover, career advisor, stylist, social secretary, emotional cheerleader, mom to him, their future kids, or both, and eventually on-call therapist minus the $200 hourly fee. This form of emotional gold digging is not only detrimental to men, but it's exhausting to an entire generation of women. So I feel like, honestly, a lot of this isn't conscious, but I think it's a topic that we need to bring into consciousness. Like, I don't know if men outwardly think I'm an emotional gold digger and I need a woman to help save me and confide in and bring me happiness. I feel like they don't think that exact explicit thought train, but I feel like it's romanticized in a subtle part of our society that isn't brought enough to light. So emotional gold digging could be a trend where you just naturally rely on your partner. But I feel like men as a whole should be more open to confiding in one another. And it's not necessarily a gender-based thing to be able to do that. But again, it's so systemically like brainwashed into society. I could see why, even if a man understands this concept, why he still feels unsafe to go to another man, because that other man might not be this woke. But I feel like it's important to try to seek male friends that are comfortable with that, so you can find friends as well as professional therapy, and just not relying on your partner to be your sole source of emotional support and happiness, I think, is something that needs to be worked on in society. And I feel like that is romanticized in a lot of lines and insinuated. This concept is insinuated in a lot of famous movies, just overall, like being their emotional support. There's like a whole actually movie on it called Failure to Launch, pretty much, which is interesting now that I think about it. But again, I feel like this quote brings up an interesting point, that it's not healthy to either party, and it's almost using them for the wrong reasons. You aren't there because you continue to choose your partner or love your partner. It's because they need you on an unhealthy level. And needing, in my opinion, is toxic. I feel like that concept of needing someone else for you to be complete, or someone to complete you, isn't necessarily a healthy thing. I think it's more romantic to choose someone because of who they are, and to pick them every day because of who they are, and to be able to confide in them as a friend, but also be able to confide in others and therapy, and not rely on them as the sole emotional source. So yeah, I feel like that was an important thing to bring up. And I feel like that's something that I possibly have romanticized as a good trait within myself when I'm in a relationship, but I'm trying to be more conscious of it, as well as try to find someone who's not looking for that. And I feel like choosing someone is much more romantic. So anyway, I'm trying to think of what I'm looking forward to this week. So this week I'm actually looking forward to continuing an at-home workout program that I've been working on and continued to do for 8 weeks. And now I'm starting a new challenge, which is 12 weeks long. So I'm excited to start that challenge. I think it's always important to think about what you're looking forward to and think about the most positive part of your day to reflect on and look forward to, especially during the times of a global pandemic. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, or you ladies and gents for tuning in for yet another week of The Peaceful Truth. And I will see you guys soon. Thanks.